This is your host, Vaughn Sigmon, and you're listening to the Business Mechanic Show here on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're also streaming live on YouTube, and you can catch the recording of the show later this week for viewing or your listening pleasure. I really appreciate all of you joining me today. Today's topic are car dealerships dinosaurs, and they just don't realize it yet. I'm pretty sure, but not certain, that the dinosaurs did not know they were going to become extinct until they became extinct. Let's make a little more modern analogy. The one I'm going to tie the rest of the show to are they dealerships, or car dealerships? Are they Blockbuster or are they Netflix? Changes in customer trends and technology have had major impact on almost every industry, including the car dealership model. Think about what the smartphone, just the smartphone, has done to change our lives since July the 29th. Huge hit. Teen apparel retailer Aeropostale filed for bankruptcy in May. Later that month, JCPenney announced that it would cut payroll and freeze overtime for its employees. I got to tell you, I think they're on intensive care. Sears is in the same but worse boat, along with Kmart. They're closing over 200 locations. In fact, they just announced an additional 43 stores a couple days ago. They may be in hospice care right now. Meanwhile, all along, back at the ranch, in their most recent earnings report, Amazon posted profits for the fourth consecutive quarter, record profits for the fourth consecutive quarter, and the price of Amazon stock has spiked about 30% since February. And on the heels of all those stellar earnings, the fortunes of its CEO and founder, Jeff Bezos, it soared by $6 billion. And in doing research for this show, I literally found hundreds of retailers in all types of retail formats, shapes, sizes, products that are gone and never to be heard from again. All victims of the changing consumer demand and expectations and the advent of all this technology. Now let's go back to that smartphone. 70% of all web searches are done from these devices. Most retail purchases are now done from the comfort of one's hand via the smartphone. What used to take a trip in a car to a mall or a store, requiring hours of our day, can now be accomplished in a few seconds via a device that's no larger than a deck of cards. You'd be hard-pressed to come up with any profession or industry that's not been altered in some way. YouTube. We got a lot to talk about today. This is something I'm very passionate about. I'm hoping some of the people out there will forward this to a car dealership. If you're not the owner or the general manager of a car dealership, I think you need to go look at the mirror and look at some history. I'm telling you, this is a big deal. And it's one that I'm truly concerned with, because the landscape is about to change. I don't know when, but it's going to change. And I just don't see the necessary changes happening in the auto industry, in the dealership world, to be ready for what the customer wants. I'm going to go into a lot more detail in here in a few more minutes to talk about what the customer wants and what they're getting, and how we have opposing forces, opposing priorities, that in the end, the consumer's going to win. The consumer's going to win, but somebody's going to come up with a better way. And I'm going to offer to all of you, which I'll get to in just a couple minutes. And like I say, AutoNation still lives on, but they failed back in the late 90s, one of the biggest corporate failures ever. And they lost. They lost in a competition to CarMax. And CarMax has always been very good about spotting trends, looking over their shoulder at any new competition or shifts in consumer demand, and most importantly, acting on it. That's one of the reasons why CarMax sells up to 6 times the number of used cars anyone else in the business does. And hey, they learned their own lesson from their founding company, Circuit City, which is a whole other case study we won't get into today. But first, I want to give you a little history lesson on Blockbuster to remind you a little bit, and thanks to Wikipedia for all this information. Blockbuster, American-based, they provided home movies and video games, rental services through rental shops, DVD by mail. For a brief time, they had some streaming and video on demand, too late in the game. They achieved popularity during the 80s and 90s, up into their mid-2000s, and at its peak in 2004, Blockbuster consisted of 60,000 employees with over 8,000 stores. And they absolutely dominated the video rental business. I mean, who does not remember Friday afternoons or evenings picking out the movies for the weekend, going down to the Blockbuster store? You know, be kind and rewind. It's another example of technology changing. And I came across, doing my research, this next little tidbit that I thought was really interesting. I hope you do too. And in 2000, Blockbuster partnered with Enron in an attempt to create a video on demand service. Yeah, Enron, that fine example of corporate stewardship, and Blockbuster worked on a partnership. And initially that partnership was supposed to last 20 years. However, Enron, they chose to terminate the deal only a few months later over fear that Blockbuster could not provide sufficient films for the service. They just didn't think it was going to work. Looking back, it's a good history lesson. Also in 2000, I thought this was even funnier. The Blockbuster turned down a chance to purchase the still fledgling Netflix for $50 million. Wow. How things would have been different for Blockbuster had they done that deal. So has anybody out there heard of Carvana, Shift, Vroom? Well, if you haven't, they're all smart little companies today, just like Netflix was back in 2000, with a very different approach to selling cars based on what they believe is the way cars will be sold over the next 5 to 10 years. None of them at this point are selling a lot of cars. In the scale of things, they're not a gnat on an elephant's ass. Carvana, the bigger of that group, they're going to do about $300 million in sales, maybe a little bit more than that. And that sounds like a big company, but remember the scale of the industry. The average used car sells for about $20,000. So they're going to sell 1,500, 1,800 cars this year. That's out of 44 million used cars. So they barely show up with they barely break into the percentile of market share. That's pretty small. Just like Netflix was a couple decades ago. Now back to our Blockbuster history lesson. As a result of various factors, including competition from Netflix, Redbox, some other video demand services, Blockbuster lost significant revenue in the late 2000s and on through 2010. And in 2010, they filed for bankruptcy. And in 2011, the remaining 1,700 stores, remember they had at their peak 8,000 stores, the remaining 1,700 stores were bought by satellite television provider Dish Network. And today, a few years later, there are less than 50 old remnants of Blockbuster stores still around, mostly in Alaska. That's another weird piece of history. Blockbuster made the mistake, I'm afraid that many of today's current car dealers are going to repeat, which they did not adjust to the trends consumers were demanding. Now, let's look at the company that put Blockbuster into extinction, Netflix. They were founded in 1997. Their initial business model was similar to Blockbuster, but they did it a little differently. They did DVD sales and rentals through the mail. Although they, after a few months after the start, the founder eliminated the sale part of it, just to focus on the thing that was working best, which is the rental business by mail. In 2007, marching forward, Netflix expanded its business with the introduction of streaming media. And man, what a game changer that's been. while still retaining the rental service, which is now a very small portion of their business. And what was a game changer then was you no longer had to go to the store to pick out your movies, unless you got to on Thursday, so you wouldn't get them by the weekend by mail. They were already on top of this whole time-saving thing. So 10 years ago, see the connection? Netflix started streaming video the way consumers wanted it, without having to leave the comfort of their home or even go into the mailbox to get their DVD. The company expanded internationally, with streaming available in Canada in 2010, continued growing its streaming service from there. In January 2016, Netflix operated in over 190 countries. And in 2017, they reported over 93 million subscribers worldwide, including more than 49 million right here in the United States, which is practically every home in America. And I'm betting anyone hearing this is a Netflix subscriber and enjoy the ease of service and broad selection just as my family does. And the consumer trend continues today. It's pasted all over everything. Make it easy, make it fast, and thank you, Amazon. Let's see what needs to start changing in the car business. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the needed changes, in my opinion. Don't go anywhere. This is good stuff. We'll be right back. Hey, good morning. We are talking about car dealers. Are they going to be Blockbuster and Netflix? When we come back from this commercial break from the radio show, and I appreciate you guys sticking with me out there, and I enjoy all the views I'm starting to get. I appreciate that. If you wouldn't mind subscribing, I'm trying to put 3 or 4 new videos up a week. I'd love to be able to share my viewpoint on a lot of things, particularly around leadership, management development. Today, it's a particularly close subject to me, which is the car business, which I love, but I don't like what's happening in the car business or what's happened in the car business. So we're going to talk about, as soon as we come back in just a minute or so, we're going to talk about what I see, some experiences, some research, and to get some thoughts out there, some ideas out there of what needs to change in the car business. And there's simple changes that really don't cost a lot of money, that will actually make a lot of money. But somebody in the dealership world has got to be the first to make this happen in a big way. I'm talking in very broad generalities today. There's certainly a dealer or two around the country that are doing things better than the majority. But when you're looking at the big chains out there, the AutoNations, the Penske's, the Sonics, the Lithias, all those guys, none of them, they're operating on the same business model they've operated under for 70 years. Going back. This is your host, Vaughn Sigmon, and you're listening to the Business Mechanic Show here on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're also streaming right now live on YouTube, and if you can't watch it now, we record it, and you can listen to it or watch it later this week. Hope you do. So before we went to break, we were talking about the changes that the car business, the auto dealership world needs to be making in order to not become extinct like Blockbuster did. So what needs to change? Well, the first thing, I think it's the most obvious and glaring one to me, outside of technology. Car salespeople have the distinction of being number one in a very dubious category. They are the least trusted profession in America. Can dealers not be motivated by that? In fact, just a couple days ago, I was talking to a new contact, making a friend, new contact of mine, and of course, we start talking about cars, which anyone who knows me, if they're going to hang out with me, they're going to talk about cars. And he shared with me, as many people do, almost everybody that when we start talking about cars, they share almost exactly the same experience. This one was recent. I'm going to share it with you. He purchased a car, bought a new Mustang not long ago. And he came right out and expressed what I'm sharing to you today. And he told me he would never go to that dealership and buy again. And of course, I asked why. And he said, and he's got pain on his face, and he says, it was such a freaking hassle. It took me 4 hours to buy a car that I went in knowing exactly what I wanted. I knew they had it. I just needed a price, sign some paperwork, and get out of there. Yet it took him 4 hours as they played their games, and he sat around doing nothing for most of those 4 hours, waiting on his salespeople to do whatever he was doing. It doesn't take that long. It does not take that long. Why does it take that long? Well, by doing things like this continues to perpetuate this lack of trust. They just do not trust the people they interact with in car dealerships. And why? Well, I'll tell you. In a study I was a part of a few years back, I found out a lot of those answers. And during that study, we followed 100 car shoppers, and we followed them for 90 days. It's a little bit of a blind study. They didn't know who was doing the study, but they knew we were doing the study with them, so it was all voluntary. And we tracked their activities. We put monitors on their computers to track the websites they were going to, what pages they were visiting, how long they spent on those pages, what information was important to them. Was it features, benefits, safety, reviews, quality? And we found out a lot of surprising things. And one of those was YouTube. YouTube was the most visited website for their research. And apparently they just love getting independent reviews and feedback on the cars they're interested in. Things like a virtual test drive. And as they're doing their research, they'd add or eliminate makes and models based on what they were learning from these reviews. And these YouTube experts, or so-called experts. And in fact, the average person, this blew us away too, the average person we studied spent over 40 hours conducting research prior to ever contacting a dealer. We were blown away by that, 40 hours. And as part of that study, we would conduct interviews with these participants on a weekly basis. And we wanted to stay informed on where they were, what their shopping process was. And one of the questions we naturally asked was, why do you spend so much time doing this research? And there was several different motivations, but one single came out of every single person. One single motivation came out of every person we interviewed. Distrust of car salespeople. They wanted to have confidence. They wanted to arm themselves with confidence so that they wouldn't be taken advantage of, because they know their dealers are going to try to trick them in some way, to take them in with some silly game, these games that dealers play today. And what are dealerships doing about that? What are they doing to not change this sales process, to adapt to this horrible reputation, and to adapt to the fact that the smartphone can eliminate this reputation pretty quickly? And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And listen, I get it. I get that it's hard to be motivated to change when things are going pretty well. You have a monopoly. You got a monopoly on a business if you're selling cars. You're the only people who can sell your brand of cars, new cars. And also some of the wealthiest people in the country, well, they came from the car business. They made their money in the car business. Real estate and cars, two big money makers. And why change? Why change when things are going so good? The car business pays the people at the top very, very well. Why mess with that good thing? However, here's my warning. At some point, a Netflix is going to come along and start biting at your ankles. And then they're going to take a leg. And then you may or may not, be able to recover, just like all those other retailers who are no longer in existence. They're extinct because a better way came along, just like Netflix. And I ask you all, why not consider making a concerted effort to change this whole lack of trust issue? Yeah, today's car dealer, automotive dealer space, it's very fractured. It's not that comparable truly to the Netflix Blockbuster scenario. But it worries me, though, that I'm not seeing any news on dealers working on improving the perceptions of integrity and transparency. And I got to tell you, I think the manufacturers are complicit in it as well. There's so many hidden incentives. The average customer just does not even know they exist. We're going to go to break. I'm going to talk about those hidden secrets that dealers love to keep away from you. And then we're going to start talking about my ideas on how they can improve their business model. We'll be right back. Okay. Hello, my Netflix fans. Hello, my Netflix fans. I'll say that a little better. I'm a little tongue-tied today. I'm a little tired. It's been a couple long days for me. So, love doing this with you guys. This subject is one that I'm very passionate about. And listen, if you're a car dealer, you'd like to take this guy's opinion who sold, I've been responsible for selling millions of cars in my career, millions of cars in my career, with a extremely high profitability, with an extremely high customer service score in a very different way. Why is it that there's only one company out there that's attacking it in a different way? Why aren't other people joining that? I know all the secrets. I know what worked, what didn't work, and how they worked. And if you want to get an expert's opinion on it, and maybe start becoming a leader in the industry and making some changes, reach out to me, vsigmon.com. It'll be worth you well. It'll be worth your while. It costs you nothing to have a phone conversation. Let's talk about some of the things that I think potentially you could change that would make you a ton more money. Now, that was to the car dealers. You consumers out there, you're all nodding your head. Yep. It is the rare person I talk to that really enjoys customer buying or car buying experience. Generally, the ones that do have a good experience bought from a luxury dealer. Luxury dealers understand how to treat their customers. They know how to cater to their customers. And there's no reason why a Ford dealer can't sell it the same way a Lexus dealer sells it. It doesn't matter. Welcome back. This is your host, Vaughn Sigmon, and you're listening to the Business Mechanic Show here on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. And if you can, we're streaming live on YouTube. Love for you to join us. Send me over any comments on the chat features that's on there. Appreciate it. It's being recorded. You can listen to the show later this week. So we were talking about Netflix, Blockbuster, car dealerships, and we're talking about this secret back-end money, these secret incentives that dealers keep hidden from the public. And I understand why they do that. Manufacturers encourage them to do that. They're complicit in all this as well. It's not against the law. It's just a very unconsumer-friendly business practice. There's so many hidden incentives out there. But when you're in a commodity business, that today, the only way a dealer can stand out above today, I'm talking about just today, the only way a dealer can stand out is price. Well, of course, that's the price they advertise. Does that price stay that way when you get there? Another reason that people don't trust you is the car even there? I can tell you, I recently conducted some of my own personal research. I've not worked in a dealership for several years, and I'd like to know how things have progressed. Maybe some changes. Before I did this show, before I did this blog, before I did all this, I want to do my own research personally. And I got to tell you, having not bought a car from a dealership in a few years, I was very, very disappointed, but not really surprised. So as part of my research, I chose a make and model of car. Went on their website, went on the manufacturer's website, made sure I knew what options were available, packages, the colors, that sort of thing. So I was educating myself like most consumers would. And then I took those preferences just like everybody else would, and then I went to the local dealers' websites. The first dealer I went to had the best prices. And once I found out, they had the best prices by a mile. They were $1,500 to $2,500 less than anyone else in the market. that I could find. They had the colors, they had the options, they had everything I wanted, and it showed 6 of the cars I was looking for on their website. And also on their website, still acting like a consumer, they gave me the option to get pre-approved for financing. Not everybody has that, and I thought these guys really got it going on. They got a great price. They're making it easy for me to find the price on a car. They got a pre-approval application on there so I can get pre-approved before I go in there. They're starting to do things for me as a consumer like I want it done, that I can get pretty deep into this process without having to talk to anybody in a car dealership. I'm impressed with this so far. I don't have to talk to anybody. I can get a lot of things done. And then once getting that done, and even listening to the application, the exact car I was looking for, I submitted the pre-approval, submitted the car I was looking for, sat back, and I waited for the phone to ring. And I waited, and I waited some more, and I waited all day. Got not a peep. What could have gone wrong? So the next day, obviously my computer screwed up. There's no way I would have done all this and a salesperson wouldn't have called me. So I did it all over again. I filled out the app, submitted it, listed the car I was looking for, and got the same result. So what the hell? Now I'm getting frustrated because I wanted to buy a car. I was going to buy this car. If something had gone right, I would have been committed to buying this car. So I got up and I drove to the dealership. Just come back the next day. I said, okay, I'll play along. I agreed. We set an appointment. We set a time. And I told him exactly what I was looking for, that I completed a pre-approval. I even handed him my printout of all the cars I was interested in, the price, the VIN number, the stock number, everything. Next day comes along. This is my third day of trying to buy a car. The next day, I went out of my way to get to that dealership on time. I had to drive through Los Angeles rush hour traffic to get there. So that was a big hassle for me. I was about 10 minutes early, so I was proud of myself. I walked in. Place was not busy, but was ignored. I was ignored by everyone for several minutes. And during those several minutes, I looked over, and not 5 feet from me was the sales manager desk, where there was 3 managers working. Not 5 feet from me. And did one of them ask me if they could help me? Nope. They all stayed focused on that deal that was right in front of them, which I think is kind of is an example of the mindset of the dealership world. Is what's right in front of them. They're not looking forward. They weren't looking over for that next customer. And on the other side of me was a reception desk with no one sitting at it. So again, I had to stop someone, ask for a salesperson, and they were kind enough, or asked for my salesperson. They were kind enough to page my guy. A few minutes later, my guy comes over to me and tells me he's with another customer. Okay, but he was nice enough to hand me off to his, air quotes here, sales partner, who, by the way, when asked, had been there a week. This was her first week. So I'm playing along. And again, remember, I'm committed to buying this car. I go through the whole thing again. Give her the cars I'm looking for that have been pre-approved. Now, I'll tell you when we come back from break what my next experience was. And I'm going to start wrapping up with some great ideas, some simple ideas to what dealers need to be doing in order to become much more effective and profitable in the minds of not only this consumer, but everybody else I know out there. So hurry back. We'll be right back. This is your host, Vaughn Sigmon, and you're listening to the Business Mechanics Show here on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Check us out on YouTube Live as well, and where it's all being recorded, so you can watch or listen to us a little bit later this week. So back to my story. I'm in the dealership. I'm with my second salesperson who'd been there all of a week. I give her my list of the cars that I'm prepared to buy. And guess what? All 6 cars All 6 cars. Not a one of them was in stock. They were all on order or in transit, which, by the way, is against California DMV law. I've got my dealer's license. I've sold millions of cars in California. I know what the rules are. And you cannot advertise a car on your website for sale unless it's in stock. So again, this goes to the whole perpetuation of distrust. They didn't have a single one of these cars. And I'm going to wrap this story up. I'm playing along, but I'm going to wrap this story up. 2 months later, by the way, she never called me back. None of these cars ever showed up. 2 months later, I go back to the website, same cars, same pictures. Cars still aren't there. What a scam. So I went ahead and I cross-shopped 2 more dealerships, got almost the same experience. And in fact, as I was asking these questions about how long the salesperson had been there, the most tenured person I talked to was there 90 days. And that makes my point. As long as only certain dealers can monopolize on who you as a consumer can buy a car from, they act however they want to. Because where else are they going to go? And they're all bad. Just pick one that's less bad. What a concept. How sustainable is that? Car dealers, you got to be looking over your shoulder at the upstarts that can become your competitors someday. In fact, this is how oblivious some of them are. I recently spoke to a dealer principal. He owns a $1 billion dealer group. And I asked him what his opinions were of Schiff, Vroom, and Carvana. And he never heard of them. Never even heard of them. I got to tell you, I was completely shocked. But you think about today in the consumer world, the best advertising, any dealership outside of price, the best advertising they get is positive word of mouth. And in the world of social media, Facebook, Yelp, all that stuff, imagine the impact a dealer could have in a commodity business where you can only differentiate yourself today with price. They could dominate their competitors and probably make much, much more than their competitors per car by just becoming the standout for providing exceptional customer service. The dealers who make that what it would today would be a radical change, where they're going to win the customer. They're going to win the customer loyalty game, and in the end, they're going to win the game. And yeah, today you have loyal customers because they can't really buy from anybody else. And yeah, customers have a good buying experience, but it all is based on their perception of what a experience is. I'm just telling you about mine. I'm telling you about the ones I've heard from dozens and dozens of other people. So when are you going to start making some changes there? Think about the people who are out there. They're easy to do business with in a commodity business. That's why they dominate. Outside of the car business, they're in a commodity business. The ones that are successful are the ones that are easy to do business with, and it's the rare car dealer that's easy to do business with. The internet's changed everything. They've changed the game. And what are car dealers doing to leverage that? We're back to my smartphone again. You take this lack of trust, you couple that with all the information that's available to someone is willing to inform themselves. They're going to be armed with a ton of information, and then they're making a buying decision. What are they going to do? They want to avoid the hassle. If there is somebody out there that stands out from the crowd that is, according to their peers, consumers' peers, are easy to go shop with and buy a car, man, that's where more people are going to go to. Going into a dealership is a freaking hassle. My experience is no different than just about anybody else's. But if you're going to go buy a new car or a late model used car, you got to go into a dealership. DMV laws dictate that in many states because of poor business practices on the dealerships. You have to go into a dealer to see all the signs on the walls, the warning signs that dealers have to post. Now, not all dealers follow that law. Some have gotten away with it for years. Okay, DMV, let it go. But those laws are in place for a reason. Consumers really don't want to spend 4 hours or more buying a car. And take this in. I asked one auto dealer expert, as I was doing research again, and one auto dealer expert, why, in his opinion, has there not been more transparency, upfront transparency on pricing? Because customers really hate haggling over a price. And he told me exactly the way I expected him to respond to me. Dealers, they can't do that, because based on their monthly back-end incentives from the manufacturer, they really don't know what they can sell that car for. So back-end money, that's what commonly referred to as holdback money, back-end money. It's based on the volume of units being sold, either on makes or models or the total dealership. Sometimes it includes customer service scores, primarily on the service side of things. Some dealers can make between an extra $500 to $1,500, $2,000 or more in incentives that the consumer never knows about. You can buy a car all day for invoice. That's not what the dealer's paying for it, my friends. So I call BS on what my auto industry expert said about transparency of pricing. BS. The point is, pricing isn't hard to be transparent with. I did it for years at CarMax in 2 different new car dealerships, 2 that I was responsible for. And somehow we could adjust the prices whenever we needed to based on these incentives. We took advantage of those too. We passed all the incentives along to the consumer, and we did fine with that approach. In fact, one of those dealerships was the 2nd largest Toyota dealership in the nation. And the other was a Jeep Dodge dealer that was Chrysler, that was generally bounced between the third or 4th largest in the nation. So transparency in pricing, you can do it if you want to, but most choose not to, because it's all about making the most off of you rather than making it easy for you to go buy a car, which is just very short-term thinking and runs a very, very strong risk of you becoming extinct. When we come back, I'm going to talk about some other examples of what car dealers can be doing to take some very easy steps to become more relevant today. We'll be right back. This is your host, Vaughn Sigmon, and you're listening to the Business Mechanic Show here on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're also on YouTube Live right now. So we're going to finish up this discussion today on Blockbuster or Netflix. Dealers, what are you going to be? And I'm going to talk about some of my viewpoints on what I think dealers can be doing, should be doing, in order to avoid becoming extinct. First, change your reputation. And one of the easiest ways to change your reputation outside of changing your business practices is hire and engage really good salespeople. Start with your salespeople. These are your customer-facing reputation builders. The individuals that are the first and the last memory of their $37,000 on average purchase that, by the way, they use every day. Take care of your people. They'll take care of your customers. Everything else will take care of itself. And the auto industry, the car dealership world, is notorious for being very poor employers. And just a general shift, just a simple general shift towards a more employee-friendly environment. Well, you get that started right away, especially on the sales side, and you might have people longer than 90 days working for you. Quit hiring salespeople like cattle. Turnover in the with auto salespeople is in the triple digits, for God's sakes. And like I mentioned in previous shows, turnover with your employees cost about 20% of their annual pay. And in a sales position, it's more like 50%. So hire slow, be selective, bring them into a culture that's fun and rewarding, where they're treated like a valuable resource. Allow time for them to train, become competent. It typically takes 90 days before competence starts setting in. I didn't find one salesperson that had been with a car dealer for more than 90 days. I know there are some. I don't want to talk too broad a generality. It's just my experience, but it's more common than not. You know, car dealers are very disconnected from that aspect for some reason. They throw people out there like cattle, and only the strong survive. And the whole motivation is just to have warm bodies out there to greet your customers. They're not thinking about the long-term aspects of their decision making when it comes to that. And very few of these salespeople make it. So look around. What other industry does this? Training and retention are big steps towards hanging on your people, building a better customer experience. Give them product training, teach them how to really sell, not selling in a way that's going to put the most money in their pocket or your pocket, but by listening. Find out what the customer wants and give it to them. Teach them how to really build relationships with the customers. Teach them how to build value through treating the customer, how they're treating the customer. Put people on the floor that you're proud of, that are going to be with you a long time. That translates to the customer, I promise you. And just quit the pricing games. Advertise the price the car is and kill the haggling. Customers hate that. And why is it in car dealers' DNA that they have to hide the price or play these pricing games? Get focused on selling units. Build volume. Build value around the dealership. Build a great customer experience. Pay a flat commission rate for each car. Forget about paying on gross profit. Take the commission completely out. Learn the right ways to sell cars online. The right way, the customer's way. The right way is the customer's way. I'm glad you guys have joined me today. I hope I've stimulated some thought out there. I don't want it to be too late. I don't want any more Circuit Cities or Kodaks or Sears in the car dealership world. Contact me by phone, 714-421-6498. Visit my website, vsigmon.com, at V as in Victor, S as in Sam, IGMON.com. Check out my blogs, my previous podcasts, my videos. I'm available for a few appointments. You can make those on my website. I really appreciate everybody joining me today. Visit my YouTube channel. I really appreciate Vaughn Sigmon, the business mechanic. Subscribe while you're on there. Check me out on LinkedIn and Facebook, Vaughn Sigmon, the business mechanic. Thank you all very much, and we'll talk to you next week. Good. I hope you have a great day. No, everything go okay today?